Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the new Thursday live stream. At 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is 40 other different times around the world. But this is where we are today. So we're going to get started. We're talking about how to raise and feed baby fish. Now, this can get super technical, but I also want to keep it super applicable, right? So I think most people, and dare I say maybe everyone, starts by breeding fish on accident. One day a baby shows up, and maybe it's a tetra, maybe it's a live bear like it was for me. My first ever was some black mollies that gave birth, and my world exploded into what it is today. But even last week I saw fry from rasboras that I was not expecting. Accidental breeding is happening every day in most of our aquariums, and the difference between getting free fish and not is knowing how to raise them, or even looking for them too, or creating an environment. You know, a bare bottom tank is a lot harder to have babies make it than a fully planted tank, or something with a lot of castles or something like I've got going on with my African cichlids. So I had a great time at the aquatic experience. I'm glad to be back, and we're going to get right down to it. People are funneling in left and right here. Henshaw says, the Friday stream, maybe you're down under at New Zealand or Australia. But, yes, so I've got quite a few things that we've detailed out here. There's a lot to this, and I want it to be a lot because I want to cover this relatively extensively, so that if 3 weeks down the road, 3 months down the road, you're like, oh my gosh, I got a baby fish. Wait a second. I skipped that live stream that said exactly what to do when this happened, and I'm going to go back to that. So hopefully this is jam-packed for you. So first things first, we have to identify if we're going to attempt to make some inhabitable conditions to raise fish up, whether it's purely I want to crank out 1 billion of these, or it'd be nice if that accidentally kind of happens someday down the road in 8 months, right? We need to know what our fish are trying to do. For the most part, most fish are an egg layer or scatterer, and that means they take their eggs and they're going to go put them somewhere, or they're just going to go eggs everywhere. Let's hope some make it. That covers most of the fish. Then you've got a couple others, and there's even some extra oddballs. I'll throw one in as an example, but then you've got like live bears. They're going to hold those eggs inside and release live fish. That's a lot easier to raise up because you don't have to protect the eggs, which is nice. And then you also have mouth brooders. And these are fish that hold the eggs in their mouth until they hatch. Then they just spit them out and they swim around. I was going to say fly around, but they swim around. And then you've got crazy oddball stuff like the splash tetra, where they will jump out of water onto a leaf, lay their eggs up there, and then the male will splash water onto those eggs for days and days and days till they hatch out. Then those fry fall off that leaf back into water. Like, that's a crazy scenario that we're not going to really go down into that, because that's getting real specific, and no one accidentally splash tetra babies. Like, that just doesn't happen. So, but for the most part, in all of those scenarios where we've got egg scatterers, egg layers, live bearers, and mouth brooders, any of those, which that's going to cover 99% of all fish, the more you have available for hiding spots, the better. Now, I can hear my wife walking in. Usually that's going to be like live plants. That's going to be decorations, things like that. Yes?
I have something vitally important.
Okay.
Since we're talking about fry,
Oh.
we're going to bring a fry picture of you in.
I see. My wife wants to show off
Because most people haven't seen
the
that.
baby Cory. This is a baby Corydora, just so you know.
This is before you grew into your head.
See if we can get that. There we go, yeah. There we go. That's me. That's not even Halloween. That's just probably like Wednesday night. You know,
It's true,
you can see the age of that couch there. But yes, I've always been this adorable. There you are.
That was important.
Back from the derail, I gotta figure out where I was.
Sorry, I had to interrupt.
Let me get back here. So we're talking about cover and fry food. You know, in that instance, you have, you know, sorry grandma, a horribly ugly couch, and that's where I was able to hide from the predators, you know, bears and squirrels and raccoons and things like that. But in your aquarium, the more stuff you have, live plants, rockwork, sticks, even fake castles and fake corals and all that, the more the fish have to look around the obstacles, the better it is the fry are going to be able to hide. And naturally, that creates an environment where if a fish lays 300 eggs a day, maybe not a day, a week, then a couple of those might make it. And that would be great. And so there are going to be times where you have like an Oscar that might lay 5,000 eggs. And that also, if they can hatch with not getting eaten, they can make it, right? And egg layers, for the most part, they guard their eggs. Now, we can get things that come in and eat them and that kind of stuff, but, you know, they guard them. But once they're free swimming, you know, once those angel fry hatch out, or angel eggs hatch out, those fry are going to be a little wily. There's 700 of those. I can't even keep track of one kid, let alone 700 kids. And so some of them are going to go over here and get eaten by this tetra and get eaten by that. But you might spot, wait a second, in the corner behind the canister outflow, there's a baby, right? And you could save that and net it out and raise it up in another little aquarium. You could have a little breeder net. You could have all these things to make sure it doesn't get eaten. But then what? Then what do we do? Then we need to feed it. And that's where we're going to fall down a lot of times, because you're going to spot this fish in, you know, 3 weeks, and you're not going to be prepared. And that is the problem. So what you can do is you can get yourself a little bit of supplies that will make things a lot easier. Some fry foods, and that's what you call a baby fish, is a fry. And, you know, depending on like tetras and that kind of stuff, you might have to go really down the rabbit hole and be like, well, I kind of need vinegar eels, I need white worms, I need, or not white worms, but you would want, yeah, it's white worms, yeah. And then like brine shrimp. Like today I was hatching out brine shrimp. I don't even have super small babies. It's a good food for everything, but something like this is not what I recommend, because this can of eggs is like over $60, right? And you got to keep it in the fridge and all that. And let's see if I can show you what these eggs look like, because I think that might give you a reference point here. So it's like a very fine, powdery, like almost, it doesn't feel like sand. It feels like flour. You can't probably can't even see it. It'll stick to your hands, like you can't get it to come off because it's that fine. And these are the eggs that will hatch out if you're to hatch live baby brine. Now, in a pinch, some species will take frozen baby brine. So you could have brine shrimp that's already been hatched out. It's in a little tiny cube, and it sits in your freezer laying in wait for that accidental fish. Meanwhile, you could be treating your other fish. That helps condition them to spawn. You can do things like, if you have live bearers and mouth brooders, you can do things like the fry food, which is just a finer food that you could spray in. You could also have flake food, which, by the way, go buy all the flake food. But something like the extreme flakes, what's nice about it, a couple of things. Ugh, I haven't even opened this yet. But you can get a little bit of flake and you can really make it into, you know, that super fine dust. Again, like now it's stuck to my fingers. And that'll just sit right on the top of the water there. Now, Dean and I were discussing this even just yesterday on the finalities of feeding foods to different fry. Some fry, like rainbow fish fry, which they're going to lay maybe 7 to 10 eggs every single day in your aquarium, and if they hatch, you're going to see tiny little babies right at the surface of the water. Now with that, Vinegar eels, if you feed vinegar eels, they stay at the top of the water. That's where they want to feed, right? But if you were hatching out CORYDORAS, oh, I've got baby cories. If the vinegar eels always stay at the top, they're never going to get to eat, right? So we need something that's going to sink down there, and that might be more like the microworm. That's what I was trying to remember earlier. Not white worm, but microworm. Microworm's also very small. Will sink all the way down, right? And then you've got all these fish that want to swim in the middle, right? So they're not only at the top, they're not only at the bottom. And that's where something like live baby brine shrimp will work. And the good news about live baby brine is, you know, it'll derp around, and then eventually it'll go to the bottom and get eaten by a corydora. It'll derp around, eventually go to the top and get eaten by that, you know, that rainbow. But some of the rainbows are too small to eat and hatch brine shrimp already. So that's when you have to really get into some nerd level and get very fine powder foods. And that might be like ceramicron or something like that. And it just sits on the top of the water. You'd swear you're not even putting anything on there. It's like this little bit of dust. And that's a huge meal for them. I'm pretty sure I'm putting like krill and brine shrimp eggs like directly into my eyes at this point, which is not good because some people are allergic to that. I'm not, luckily. But then you've got things like discus. The reason why discus are so hard to raise is because they're very small and they want to feed on the slime coat. So in the picture you saw those babies, they would actually feed from the slime coat on the fish, finding little morsels, stuff that sticks to that slime coat. They go, ooh, I could eat that. So imagine it like your dog eating crumbs off your shirt. That's how you raise a baby discus. You just gotta have enough crud on you that they can eat. And then a couple days later, 2 or 3 days later, then they can start taking the brine shrimp off of you, and that's when they really start growing. So yeah, brine shrimp is a magical thing. That's why I'm back to hatching it out in the fish room. And I thanked Dean personally yesterday. We were hanging out and I go, you don't know how much you've done. You've got me getting the bug to hatch brine shrimp out, and I know that brine shrimp unlocks a whole new fish keeping level. If you've never hatched brine shrimp before, the Pandora's box that you're about to open when you get to breed fish and raise stuff and see stuff healthier than it's ever been and get results you've never gotten is crazy. And so I'm excited to know what's going to come back out of the fish room. In fact, I had new fish land. And I love the feedback loop that we've got going. I was looking for, someone asked about a live bear, and I said I was looking for the black chin live bear. 2 different people reached out. One of them even already shipped them. They landed at the store, and they're going to be delivered after the live stream here. You guys will get a video on that. Thank you to Preston Blake for that. Yeah. So I'm going to circle back around and start talking about maybe fry tank setup or possibly main tank setup. And in general, we've got hungry mouths. That's a problem, right? They're going to go and they're going to eat stuff. But we've got other hungry mouths as well, and that would be in the form of like a canister filter, a hang-on back, a power head. If they're pulling water through, babies can't swim against that. They get sucked in and shredded. All right, I got to listen. Do I have... Yeah, I do have audio in my headphones down there, and it is driving me insane. So I got to figure out where that is coming from. There's got to be a hidden video in the background here playing that I would never allow that. I would never allow. I cannot find it though. Let me keep looking. This is a derail, but hearing something out of the corner of your ear, especially when it's your own voice, crazy distracting. Why can I not find this? There's only so many videos that could be playing, and it's none of these. It's not that. It's not that. And I made sure to turn off... Oh, wait. It could be... No, it can't be that either. Oh, wait. Yeah, it's off. Input. The derailing. It's horrible. Why? All right. Well, I can mute my sound on mine. That'll get me through this. But we need to use some tactics to not just suck those fry up. Could be intake sponges. You know, put an intake on there, give it a buffer so that even if that fry was getting pulled towards it, it might touch and be like, whoa, need to start swimming. But in general, when we really want to breed, I'm watching people talk. We want to use sponge filters or undergravel filters or things with very gentle filtration, as this filter would do it. A power head that is very, very, very turned down could do it. What else could do it? That's mostly what you can use or what you want to be using. You know, and there's two different ways here. There is the actual spawning of the fish, and that can be done with lots of flow if you remove the eggs or remove the fry quickly enough. But the actual hatching, and that's setting up a rearing tank, definitely don't want them getting sucked up in there. That would be very bad. And then also, one of the bigger considerations I would say when you are setting up a fry tank is how big. And with that, I have to sneeze. I think I have krill or brine shrimp in my nose. Wait for it. It might go away. It's going to wait till I get into the next topic. But you want to appropriately size the aquarium to what the fish are today. Not, you know, if you've got 800 angels, don't put them in a 55 gallon. You need to put them in like a 5 or a 10 gallon. And the reason being is you need to make sure the fish don't have to swim too far to find food. If you take, you know, this and you go squirt, squirt in the 55 gallon aquarium, and the food is now miles apart, these fish can actually starve to death while looking for food. They can't find it. Where if you put it in a nice smaller aquarium, yes, it's going to be packed in there, but at the same time, it's like you pulled up your chair to the buffet. You don't even like take a plateful and go back to your table. You're just eating straight from the buffet now. And you can imagine how fast they will grow and pack on weight from that. So that's usually the preferred method. Smaller little vessels, aquariums, whatever you want to call them, and then progressively you keep stepping them up. And you know, if you only had one little accidental fry, you go and get a bowl, or you get like a Tupperware container and you can like float that in your aquarium and then just feed that one little fry in each day, kind of let water out and let it back in until it gets big enough, and then you could let them out. But if you're really starting to raise fry, that's where you want to have a tank ready. You kind of already know you're attempting to do it. You've got those foods ready, and you're going to make a real go of it. Some of the best fry foods out there are things you can't even buy. Things like algae, plants, infusoria, things like little copepods that grow on the plants. So you can always take like a rock with a plant or some moss and transfer it to where you're raising the eggs after they've hatched. And there'll be like a couple of days worth of food there. So even if you're like, well, I'm going to see if I can get them to eat this, and maybe you've got slightly too big of a food, you then, some of them will make it from eating what's on the plant, like that bacteria, the copepods, all that kind of stuff. And then they can grow a little bit to start taking on that bigger food that you have. But it's that transition, and that's where a lot of people fall down when it comes to raising fish, is they don't know when to start switching foods. They don't know if they have a small enough food. You know, you don't want to go from like, oh, here's a popcorn shrimp or chicken to here's a 30-pound turkey, right? You got to have some steps in between there. And we just think of, it's fish food, it's fish food. But the reality is their mouths are tiny. And so we need to progress. It's one of the reasons that flake food is so good, because when you crush it up, you're making, you know, it's like a ton of different sizes in between biggest and smallest, right? And with the brine shrimp, the good thing about them is because they're swimming around all the time, they're very attractive to eat. They almost swim into the mouth, so that helps. But eventually you get to a tipping point where something like a brine shrimp is not enough anymore. Like, they'll eat it, but they're not growing, you know? And that's where you're going to have to step it up to mostly frozen and dry foods of normal caliber, but get like micro pellets, like the nano pellet from XTREME, or Hikari's got the micro pellet or the fancy guppy pellet. Both those very good for raising fish as well. Or really start grinding up pellets and flake food. And I'm a big fan of flake food myself because it makes it easy, but I'm kind of lazy. And you know, I like the fry food as well. I guess I should talk about my own product if I'm doing a whole live stream, right? The fry food is great and amazing, and I use it all the time as well. This is actually like a super OG bottle. But nonetheless, you know, I've always got probably 5 or 10 foods. Someone was asking me even this weekend, is Extreme my go-to food now? And my response was, kind of? Because every single tank gets more than just Extreme. Like this gets Extreme pellets, it gets Vibrobites, gets frozen brine shrimp, gets Hikari Excel. I fed some experimental food from China also, and all of my tanks are that way. So even if I load a feeder with one type of food, I'm typically feeding other types, and I like a well-rounded diet. And are a lot of these foods very good? Yes, but they all should serve different purposes. Like, it doesn't make sense for me to have, I feed 5 different flake foods. That doesn't really make sense to me. But if I fed a flake food, a frozen food, a pellet food, and maybe something else, that starts making a lot of sense to me. So I like to have an arsenal, because depending on, I've got baby guppies versus adult guppies versus, I've got these black chin livebearers coming in. They could be really small. They could be big. I don't even know. They're coming to me. I haven't even seen a picture, right? So I'm prepared for all these situations, and that's what I want. And so I don't want to come off just saying like, yes, Extreme is the best. It is a quality food, and I'm enjoying it. I like the color enhancing properties. I love that the fish love the taste and smell. Like, there's things I love about it. But then at the same time, it doesn't feed out of a feeder like this. It's not a live food. It's not as nutritious as a frozen food. Like, there's a time and a place for everything. So, and I think the more live foods you have, the better you are. And we're all in a constant state of flux. There's times where I've just had a farm going in the fish room of every type of live food you could have. And then, like, up until maybe a week ago, I had nothing live in there, and I was only frozen and dry. And I think different stages in life, you'll go through different areas. And I know that I want to take the fish room back to, we're breeding. Because so many of you may have only found the channel in the last year or 2 years. You're like, this guy always talks about breeding fish. I have a long history of like 10 years of breeding an insane amount of fish. But in the last 2 years, haven't shown it. And that happens all the time for me. You know, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you did this. And it's like, I just haven't done it lately. That's the big difference. And so I'm taking it back there because, one, I love to breed fish. That's no secret to me. But 2, I want to help people that want to breed fish again. Look at my Aquarium Co-op Yeti mug. Or cooler? I don't know what you call this thing, but I call it awesome. You guys want a little piece of trivia? I probably haven't talked about this in years. This, on the other side of this mug, this might be a new emoji, by the way, has my high school nickname. And Randy, I don't know, I think, he heard about it from my cousin who works for us. I was like, how would he have heard this? But my high school nickname was Corn Dog. That's right, Corn Dog. So now you know. That's one more name you can call me besides Colby, Corby, Corey, or maybe even Corn Dog. Alright, I want to answer some of these questions and super chats. And then I want to dive back into, I've got more to talk about this, but I don't want to, like have, this asked something about live brine shrimp, and then we're 30 minutes in, like, we're not talking about brine shrimp anymore. So I want to wrap some of that in. Got a couple new members of Real Mr. Faceman and Lord Lurker, thank you. Walter wants to put some platy fish in his 20 long. How easy are they to breed, and should I get a pair or a trio? I'd get a trio, a boy and 2 girls. Very easy to breed because they're live bearers. So when they give birth, live fish are going to come out, and they can go right to flake food. I would say this, they can go to anything. Literally anything. So if you have fish food, they're going to eat it. And just so long as they don't have to compete with mama fish to eat it, they'll do just fine. You make sure they got a little nook and a cranny to go and eat, and you'll do well. Ooh, my wife's on it. Corb Dog. Yeah. All right. Ooh, Fish Tank Barn donated me $5. Thank you very much. In an old stream, I mentioned a colony breeding. Colony breeding panda cories. Could you please elaborate? Yes. So the way to accomplish that, again, is setting that right environment. And if you have crazy dense moss or some structure where you barely get to see the fish, they are one of the few corydoras that typically lay eggs down in plants as opposed to up on glass. And they don't lay very many at a time. It's usually 7 to 10. And when they do, as long as another fish, another panda cory or another fish doesn't come by and eat that egg, it'll hatch. And if you're feeding things in there that are small enough, you'll get some babies. Now, if you never feed small stuff, you might get like one, right? Because it's going to eat on that moss, like the copepods and the infusoria and all that stuff that's there. But if you're feeding like live baby brine every day and really fine crushed up flake, your results are going to be a lot higher. And Dean and I have talked about this, and that is by feeding brine shrimp and that kind of stuff into those tanks every day, you're actually showing the parents food is around for the babies start spawning. And I've found that to be very true. And a lot of times you'll have a clutch of eggs in a tank. You don't even realize. You didn't notice the female was missing for a few days. But because you're feeding the brine shrimp, now you have the babies. You're like, whoa, look at those nice orange bellies because they've been eating. And so that's kind of that magic of the brine, where once you're doing it, you've been breeding fish and you haven't been realizing, but you just haven't been raising fish. All of us are pretty much breeding fish. Rarely are many of us raising fish. That's kind of a big difference there. All right. What would I recommend for dwarf puffer fry? Yes, so that's kind of an oddball one. Again, like you can raise them in a tank with the adults, but a lot of times you're going to want things like microworms and maybe Daphnia and live baby brine will help raise all of those. There's basically the raise it up in a jungle planted tank method, and then there is gravel vac and get the eggs out into a bucket and raise them artificially method. And you got to have very good eyes to see those tiny eggs in the debris, but you can take all that gunk, put it into another tank and raise them up, and that's especially where very small foods are going to be important. And so if you know you want to raise something, make sure you're going to get a food that they can eat, and that would be vinegar eels, microworms, live baby brine. If you had those three in your arsenal, you're pretty much good to go on that fish. So from there, there's a little bit of work, but getting those, you'll be good. I have a red worm coming out of my fish. Parker, you need to treat with, so what you have most likely, and obviously I can't see this fish right now, but would be called camelinus red worms. And what treats that is levamisol. If you go to selectaquatics.com, that's one place that sells it. Hopefully, I'm hoping to bring that to the market in the next year or so, would be levamisol in a nice, neat package for you to treat. But there's a lot more testing for us to do, so we haven't brought it out yet. But levamisol is the product, and Googling camelinus red worm is what you want to be doing to brush up on that subject. At what size would I stop feeding baby brine shrimp? Well, at the moment in my fish room, I don't know, maybe, I think it's been on stories and members, but I've got some apistogrammas and I've got some crebensis. Both of those got live baby brine today, and they're this big. So there are species that will eat it. Like those fish love to eat tiny foods, but like these goldfish probably wouldn't track it down, not worth their time. So it depends on the fish. But a lot of rainbow fish and other stuff that even gets pretty big will chase that down and love to eat it. So you kind of just watch the fish. If they're not eating it, don't feed it anymore. But it, you know, in community tanks especially, it's really easy to do. All right. Team Canada! I'm going to delve back into some of what I want to talk about, and then we'll come back and the rest of the super chats that have popped up have been since we took a break. So I struggle to keep and raise bubble nest eggs. So that is an area that I will admit that I am not 100% fluent on, but a lot of it comes down to the way the nest is built. Is it protected? And then do you have a good father typically to take care of them? And from there, you're to raise the eggs. So I'm assuming they're hatching out. From there, it becomes the arsenal of fry foods. Like if it's bettas, just go straight to live baby brine. But live foods are very key to raising most fish. There are fish that can be raised without them, but it gets a lot easier and a lot better results with the live foods. All right. I'm going to jump back in my list. By the way, I wanted to mention, I want to do some announcements. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. That just means hitting that red button. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. It'll let you know, it'll send you a little alert when we go live, when we put out a new video, that kind of stuff. Doesn't cost you a penny. If you want to become a member, that does cost you $5. There's some extra perks behind the community page, one of which will be coming out probably on the weekend and scheduled, I think it's next week, would be, there's some one-on-one video conferencing for YouTube. We're part of that beta program. And then there's a group feature. There's only 20 spots in each because they're going to have staff on hand to work out any kinks that go on. But then there's members-only videos and that kind of stuff. So, you know, I hope it's worth it. And there's a great community of people behind that community as well. So, but I keep forgetting to mention that this is a podcast. What does that mean? That means we upload it on iTunes. We upload it on Stitcher. We upload it everywhere. And I probably haven't mentioned this in a year. We have the Aquarium Co-op app. That means if you go to, you know, your cell phone, you basically type in Aquarium Co-op in the App Store, you're going to go, oh my gosh, there's a whole app. And it allows you to pre-download episodes, remember where you left off, set alarms, do all that kind of crazy stuff. And I believe I found out we can now start categorizing episodes. So I'm going to work on that in the future. But, you know, I know a lot of people, I met a lot of you guys at the conventions. You're listening to this while you work. And to have it in your pocket as the app already downloaded for you, you just play it, it remembers where you stopped, all that kind of stuff might be kind of nice if you're not a full-blown podcast listener already. So we do have that out there for you guys. All right. Let's see, where did I leave off? Kind of feeding. Yeah, that's a good idea. So a lot of eggs, people start feeding right away. Realize we can't even feed until the eggs have hatched. And really, we can't even feed until they develop a mouth and a stomach and absorb an egg yolk sac, right? So usually that's somewhere between 1 and 3 days, right? So what we recommend, or I recommend, is the day they hatch, maybe I don't feed. But every other day after that, I do feed and realize some at the very beginning of day 1 probably are ready to eat. Most are ready to eat day 2. And some won't have started eating till day 3 because they're just slow to hatch and that kind of stuff. So there's a variance there. And the same thing's going to happen when you start transitioning foods. Let's say you've been feeding for 2 weeks live baby brine. When you start going over to, like, let's try some fry food from Aquarium Co-op or some flake food crunched up or whatever it's going to be, realize that maybe half of them will start eating that. But tomorrow maybe 60% and the next day 70%. But if you just go, oh, they ate it, and tomorrow you don't do any live baby brine, you just do that, you'll probably starve off 40-50% of your fish without knowing it until it's too late. So it's always a gradual thing, and I would feed both of them over and over and over until you just feed less and less of the brine if that's what you want to do. It's still great at growing fish. So I hatch it out for my entire fish room, and then I feed every tank pretty much. All right. But how many times should you feed a day? The real answer is like 190. As many times as you can feed is pretty much the right answer. Now, in our typical lives, that might be twice a day, like Dean, or feeds twice a day if he's at home, might be 3 or 4 times a day. Very small amounts. You can't make up for it. You can't, you know, I didn't feed you all day, here's a ton of food. That doesn't work either. You have to, you know, most fish will process the food you give them in about 2 hours. So while you're at work, if you work an 8-hour day, they should have been fed 4 times. Maybe you fed them right before you went to work, and then you fed them when you got home from work, but you missed about 2 feedings in there. But you can get away with just feeding once a day. You'll just get slower growth than a fish farm that's feeding, first feed's at 6 a.m. and last feed is at 6 or 8 p.m., right? Because they're going to get 12 to 14 hours of feeding and growing, where you're going to get 2 hours of feeding and growing, right? So you can see that huge disparity going on. And that's where like an automatic feeder or something like that can really help you. If you can get it to the point where, okay, it's eating dry food and that's dumping in every 2 hours, now you are at that same level. But do know that with all that extra food going in, water and stuff has to come back out. And that can be a challenge when you have fry of how do I change water? One of the tricks is don't gravel vac. Just take water off the top and maybe use a piece of like pantyhose or something like that so it's very fine and nothing's really getting sucked up. You can use a piece of pantyhose and just airline tubing, right? So it's siphoning very slow. It might take a few hours to do that water change, right? But the goal is make sure we're monitoring water quality, and slow and steady is going to win that race. And it's when we get careless that we typically run into problems. And other than like herding the fry over, there's not a whole lot you can do to avoid them. So using something like pantyhose, and then when you're doing it, do it into a bucket. So if you do suck up something, you can net it back out into the aquarium. You can give it a final look before you dump that water out. That's a one last safety check there. Yes. So some other things to talk about before we dive back into specific breeds and questions and stuff like that. Expect some die-off. Now, some of that could be genetics. Some of it could be the way we're keeping fish. Like if you've only ever raised angels once, you're probably going to kill some. It could be they're very young, right? They didn't get fully fertilized and that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of reasons why you might not get all of them to hatch. And don't feel like you failed. The goal is just to improve on that. So if you had 800 eggs and you raised 100, now they're adults, that's still 100 more than someone who hasn't raised them. But maybe on the next batch you're trying to do 120. Like, oh, where do I think I lost some? One of the steps that people really lose them is when you get fish that outgrow each other. So maybe this fish is getting the lion's share of food, and tomorrow when I feed, it's going to get the lion's share again. And the next day when I feed, it's going to get the lion's share again. And so now it's 5 times as big as the other one that wasn't getting as much. If I leave them in the same aquarium, that's always going to happen. And eventually it could get so big it'll eat that fish or make it starve. So a lot of breeders, what they'll do is they'll go in like once a week and remove all the biggest fish and put them in the next size up aquarium, making it so when you dump that brine shrimp or whatever you're dumping in there again, that the smallest fish get to eat and catch up in size. And when they get big enough, then they go to that. And eventually you're left with this very small group of runts that you can kind of catch up and get them. And meanwhile, you might have to start that on the next tank, right? Depending on how big these fish are going to end up overall, you can have to do that 2 or 3 times. And let's say you have been very lucky and you've raised these fish up. You then have to worry about culling. This is another aspect that no one enjoys, but needs to be done typically. If you had fish that are highly deformed, likely no one's gonna want to buy them, and you're not gonna want to breed them. They could be missing gill plates, they could be missing fins altogether, they could have very crooked backs. There's lots of problems that could arise. And usually I feed them to my turtles, and for whatever reason they like to troll me, and they always live. And what that means is all the fish that I was like, here, turtles, eat these, now I just have like hundreds and hundreds of fish living with them that were never meant to do that. But you know, they have been separated out from, they're not going to be bred, they're not going to be sold, they're just living out their days kind of as they want to. And maybe that's how you treat it. Maybe you have a tank of, yep, that's where these guys live, they just live out their time, I'll never breed them knowing they have genetics or something that has happened to them that is not a desirable trait. Yeah, so then it comes to rehoming. What happens if you had like an accidental spawning or you're just getting overrun? You know, that's where you can kind of, maybe if you want to sell them, I've got a whole playlist on how to kind of start like a little mini business to start selling fish, whether it's, well, not really on Craigslist anymore because they've kind of outlawed that, but, or not Craigslist, but Facebook. You can still do it on Craigslist. You can still do it on Aquabid, getgills.com. You can do it, start up your own website. You can sell it to a local fish store. You can sell it at a local club. There's a bunch of ways to do it. But unless you're really good at what you're doing, you're probably not going to make money. And I find that's one of the biggest hang-ups is yesterday you weren't a breeder. In 3 months, now you're a fish breeder. And you're competing against Dean, who's been breeding for 50 years straight. And that guy is just better than you. And that's why you're like, oh, no one's buying fish. Like, no, people are buying fish. We're all selling fish as stores. It's just maybe we're not buying your fish. Maybe there's a quality difference. Maybe there's a lack of confidence. Maybe there's just something that's not working out. But know that you will have competition, and it's not an easy gig, but the longer you're in it, typically the more success you'll have. So, all right. What do we got? Thanks for all the great breeding info. Along with Dean and Gary, you guys got me started. I now breed 8 different rainbows and tetras. Well, nice. Tetras and rainbows, very small eggs, very small fry. If you can do those, you can spawn, you can raise most fry. Doesn't mean you could spawn them, but you could definitely raise them. So that's always fun when you get some of those harder species under your belt going, okay. Like raising rainbows, it's a test in patience. It takes months and months and months and months for it to even look like a rainbow fish and have any color. So you really got to nurture them. Walter says, thank you, corn dog. That's never going to die. Corn dogs live forever. That's because the sticks left behind to avenge the death of the corn dog. Aaron Hansen, how close is the ppm of the new green co-op sponge filter to the old black Hydro 4 sponge filters that I sell? I have no idea. Like, they're fairly close, but I don't know what the PPI of the old one is. Ours are 25 PPI. When you hold them next to each other, they're within the realm. But I don't know, like, how close. Like, I don't have anyone, like, doing some kind of scientific comparison. I would say most people are like, sweet, this is exactly what I wanted. So they're not like, hey, this isn't right. You know, they're just going, oh, it's a smooth transition. So fairly close. Hikari carnivore pellets are my flower horn's favorite. Are they a good staple? I keep a lot of Hikari around. Ooh, and his 24 karat white 24 karat white cloud just spawned. That's a great looking fish. Mass 4 is a good staple. A little expensive. The trick is, whatever your staple is, still bring in 2 or 3 other foods. Like, if my staple is, what do I got here? Smoked salmon jerky. I'm gonna get way too much salt in my diet. So it'd be good to, you know, mix some other things in there. But anything in excess is kind of not good for you. So even, I will never buy into, this is the best food, you should only feed this. Like, I don't believe that exists. So, you know, fish foods are getting really good. But I don't believe any of them are complete. I don't think we have a complete human food. And if we can't do that, how are we going to do it for a fish? I don't believe the testing's there to really quantify that. So I would do mass 4 pellets. I'd probably choose another pellet. And then I would also have a frozen food. Live foods, maybe if you go get like earthworms from, you know, a bait shop, assuming they haven't been treated with anything, they're like glow in the dark or anything under the water. Or you had your own red wigglers growing in your garden. Yeah, I would do something like that, and that would be a fairly well-rounded diet. Nothing's ever perfect. We're only aquarists, right? But that's as close as I think an aquarist is going to get to like, oh, we're doing pretty good. Sorry. Jamie Cleveland says, my betta macrostoma spawned, attempted to spit the male. Eggs came out in one clump covered in cotton-like fungus. Assumed they were non-viable, but I could treat the pair with antifungal. Oh, should I? No, I wouldn't treat them with antifungal unless you were noticing fungus infections. Like in African cichlids, which I have 4 billion, you know, spawns of African cichlids under my belt, right? Not literally 4 billion, but like way too many to count. What would frequently happen with African cichlids is they would pick up a tiny rock or just a little bit of debris. And when they, you know, think about it like you've got a mouthful of water and then you put like a, you know, a jagged crustio from The Simpsons, you know, something that like would be rough, and you swish it all around because you're constantly tumbling those eggs. Well, it's eventually going to start puncturing eggs, and once you puncture one egg, that will start to fungus, and that's where it turns into a big glob. Now, you could have a scenario where your pH is all wrong and that kind of stuff, but typically they wouldn't have spawned for you. But if they had spawned for you and then you radically changed water parameters, which you probably didn't because you've got beta macrostoma and you're probably super paranoid about that. But usually they probably picked up a little bit of debris. I would see how the next 2 spawns go and see if it's probably just an outlier problem, and I wouldn't make any rash decisions based on 1 spawn yet. Martin, thanks for all your help. My hobby got better because of your explanations. Well, thanks for the $10 or 10 euros. Joseph DeLuca became a snail, aka new member. I like it. Mark Hill says, met you at Aquashella. Thanks for the extreme flake food. My South American cichlids love them. Do they make them bigger? They don't make... Oh, well, yes. So, like, they make this... We carry this package as the big package. I think they have some giant clown car size that, like, no human being can ship or whatever, and it's like $4 billion. But what when I analyze the packages, like, when you go to, like, oh, I'm gonna get the clown car size, it's still the same amount of money per ounce. So you can get the manageable, I can actually take this to my aquarium and get my hand in there and feed, instead of, like, you know, the giant cheese puff barrel container of flake food that's going to go stale on you. I hope that's what you're asking. If you're asking for physically larger flakes, no. That I am aware of. Maybe they got some... I mean, they've got pellets and stuff. That's the other thing, too, is, like, what I like about Extreme and don't like is that basically, for the most part, there's a gross overgeneralization here. The ingredients on all the foods are basically the same. It's like they found and adopted a really good formula that worked for fish, and then they changed the delivery method. Like, oh, here's flake, here's pellets, here's bigger pellets, here's smaller pellets, right? And works really well. But there's always limitations, and, you know, I think I'm hoping to work with them long term and make some other little foods there. I do think a company could make a brand that was, like, all-encompassing. Because right now, every company, I believe, focuses on how do we make it so people will only ever buy this one product and it is everything a fish will ever need. That's what people focus on, or companies focus on. I think where we need to focus on is, oh, here's product number 1, product number 2, and product number 3. If you rotate between those 3, that actually might be 99.9% complete diet for a fish. And you might have one that's more spirulina based, you might have one that's more krill based, and you might have one that is more amino acids and that kind of stuff. Like, you could, because some things just don't go together. Like, oh, we've got too much fatty oils in here, and this is going on, and that's turning rancid, and this is binding up, and this is acting weird, right? I believe you might be able to achieve it with a product line, but instead, you know, everyone focuses on, let's make one good food, let's get people to buy that. And I think we are an advanced hobby where we can understand, oh, I get it. Maybe my 2-month-old baby doesn't eat the same thing as my 50-year-old grandma. My grandma's not 50, she's like 80 something, I think, but you get what I mean. So, like, we understand that, and I think as companies, we need to stop treating hobbyists as like they don't know anything. Instead, let's start educating and embracing that, and I think that's where we'll go eventually, some point. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but some company will, because I don't think it makes sense to be like, this food is the best food for every fish out there. I don't know about that, but I think between a couple foods, you could cover almost all fish. Ooh, Kirsteny just downloaded the app. I like it. That's one more download. Don't forget to leave a review at some point. You know, I'm all about them app reviews. All right, I've neglected the normal chat for far too long. Ooh, and I did not address it. Mark Hill, thank you. That was a $50 super chat. I appreciate that. In general, I try not to focus on the dollar amounts because it's not about the dollar amounts. I am appreciative of that, but I don't want it to be way more appreciative than a $2 one. It's all good words are good words. So, Borelli are my fry. Borelli are fun Epistos to breed for sure. All right, let me try and dive in. He doesn't reply to all super chats, and if you say that, he makes sure not to include you. That's pretty much a true thing. I might have missed one. There are definitely times where I miss them, and it's because I got a long list of stuff that's moving and crazy stuff's going on. It's never intentional, but I am human. Believe it or not, I am human. I might have corn dog sticks for legs, but I am human. I'm going over them just to see. I don't remember missing any. That doesn't mean I didn't, though. So I apologize. And I'm sure one of my mods will whip it back up and be like, hey, do your job. Did I just hear I should be doing water changes on my Betta macrostoma? And he says, nah. I'm very much a similar way. I like to use larger sized aquariums so that I don't have to change water while breeding fish. Like I had crystal shrimp going for 18 months, never once changed the water. Well, that's not true. I think I topped it off, which means I changed a little bit of water once. But I like to, when things are good, keep it good instead of, you know, potentially screwing it up. I never know what copper in fish food is okay for shrimp if they get a hold of it, like the extreme food has copper in it. Yes, so I can tell you that I've fed it to tons of shrimp tanks, never had a problem. I can also tell you that if your shrimp never gets copper in its diet, it will die from a copper deficiency. Now, I believe, and this is just what I believe, that I don't think there's a fish food out there that has too much copper because it would surface really quickly. I was feeding X, all of my snails and shrimp die. Right? So I think companies are hyper aware of making sure there's not too much copper in there. And I can't even think of a food that I know of. They're like, yeah, can't feed that. It does this. You know, if there was going to be a food that would do that, I feel like it would be a medicated food and that it had so much copper, which I don't think that much copper is even good for fish, but it'd have enough copper to maybe kill off velvet or ick or something like that. And I don't think it's healthy in way excess, so that's why I just don't believe it's really an issue in the aquarium trade. This is a Yeti. What do they call these things? I don't know. I never had one of these until Randy bought me one, and now I kind of love it. But I don't know what they call this thing. It's like a metal. I mean, it's like a koozie. The super chat is from Hung Chow. Let me scroll up. I don't even have it on my list. That's what's weird. Because anything at $1.99 and up would show. Is it just like, was it just $1 maybe? I'm scrolling up as far as I can go. Let's see, scrolling. Yeah, that's so bizarre. I don't know why it's not on my list at all. Oh wait, I found it. No, I found it. It's $5. I have a 75-gallon heavily planted tank, currently dosing Easy Green twice a week, 7 squirts on Friday, and again on Monday. Are there benefits to squirting twice every day, or twice a day every day? Yes. So there is, technically, like, let's say you're dosing on Friday. If you were to run out Sunday morning, you're going to have hours without any growth on those plants. Now, if you were to dose 2 pumps every day, you're going to run out a little bit every day, but in theory, it might be less. And that's the way we do it in the warehouse, is we have auto dosers pumping fertilizer in every single day, as opposed to once a week or twice a week, something like that. The reality is you want nitrates to sit in your aquarium between 20 and 40 parts per million, derived from Easy Green, and you'll just be good for plants. Like if you're lower than that, you're in a problem. If you're higher than that, you're having a problem. But ideally, you kind of want to just, if you're looking for maximum growth, that's another thing. Not everyone's looking for maximum growth, by the way. If you were trying to grow those plants as much as you want, you would never want them to run out of fertilizer. So, there you are. And sorry for the delay, Hung. Yeah, I don't know how the way I viewed it, just my eyes kept skipping over it. So my apologies, honestly. Not intentional by any means. How's the big dojo loach doing? Made a full recovery, and I don't know if I told you guys, but it was living with turtles for a long time. And then when I was going to, where did I go? I went on all those crazy trips. Before I went to Peru, yeah. Before I went to Peru, a turtle took a big old bite like out of the back of it. And I was like, whoa, that's not good. So I caught him out and I put him in one of those totes that I set up. And he's made a full recovery, living with 2 goldfish. I think long term he's probably going to come back to the 800. Just because, why not, right? I just want to make sure real healthy again and not be like, oh no, he brought the plague because he was sick still. So, yeah, probably making a comeback. I can't get my angels to eat anything other than Tetramin tropical flakes. Any suggestions? What you could try mixing in some other flakes. One of the tricks we used to do when we were trying to get like arowanas to eat other stuff is we would take a can of food and pour like half it into the other can and mix it and shake it up and just get it to really smell like it, and it would slowly start to take it. Now, one of the things you do, something like krill, like actual krill, what are they? They're angels? Yes, angels. So maybe actual krill wouldn't work for you because it's not a big enough fish, but krill is very potent smelling, like when you smell it, and it's an attractant to fish. So attracted to this. It actually doesn't smell that bad. But garlic also could help switching it to another one. Try frozen bloodworms. The other thing you could do, you could take a frozen bloodworm, put it in like a coffee mug, put the flake in there, let it soak up those juices. If they still eat the flake, then you're conditioning them to like the taste of the bloodworm and eventually get them onto bloodworms. Once you get them onto bloodworms, you then can soak that bloodworm juice into other foods and get them to take that. It's a long process. And, you know, think of it like a kid. If a kid's used to eating mac and cheese, and then you're like, hey, let's try real food, and they say no, and then you go, okay, well, here's mac and cheese. They're never going to learn. So you have to take time and go, well, maybe you don't eat today. Maybe we try this tomorrow. Maybe we try this. And eventually, you'll get it. How do you breed African dwarf frogs? You got to get a male and a female, and then eventually when they're conditioned enough, the male is going to wrap the female. I think they call it ambiplexus. I can't remember. It sounds just like that, but I'm sure I'm murdering it. And that basically means that male's going to hold on to that female for like a day, and they're going to lay a bunch of eggs, usually in moss. And if you remove that moss, then you can raise them up. Live baby brine shrimp works wonders on those. Before they embrace each other, you'll probably hear the frogs singing through the aquarium. They make like a frog makes a noise, and yeah, they're not that difficult to raise. But then you've got like 1 billion frogs, and like, what do you do with that? So you end up with that. All right. How many employees do I have? I don't know. This always gets hard. Let's think. I have Candy. We technically have my wife working for us. Me, I'm an employee of Aquarium Co-op. We have my cousin Justin. We have Randy. We have Kevin. We have Haley, Jordan, Alfredo, Robert, Jaden, Caitlin, Nick, Jimmy. I always forget someone, then I always get teased. Who am I forgetting? My wife's probably like, you idiot, you're forgetting. So that's at least 14 at this point. That's at least 14. I'm sure I'm missing one, and I'm feeling terrible about it, but we're at 14. By the way, this is a perfect segue. We are looking to bring on one more warehouse associate, because next month is Black Friday, and then we have Christmas, and then we have January. Those are 3 months where we sell a ton of stuff. So it is a full-time position. It's not seasonal. We'll keep you on after that. We don't do that seasonal thing. But we are looking for resumes and that kind of stuff. And you would send that to careers@aquariumcoop.com. We start at $17 an hour. There's benefits. We pay 100%. Well, we more than 100% of healthcare. There's there's a shoe program for you. There's also retirement. We do employee match. There's like a bunch of good things going on. If you're following us enough, you go, hey, maybe I want that job, and you can find out more info. That's probably going to give us like 4 billion candidates, but we like to choose from the best of the best. And we are specifically looking for someone that has some plant or at least aquarium knowledge. We like to keep a balance there. We don't want it to be like a bunch of people that don't know anything about plants. We want it to be able to teach each other what to look for in a banana plant or what to look for in this plant while we're packaging and doing things. So for careers, I'm assuming this is local only. For the most part, yes. We have had employees move to come work for us. That being said, we don't do it where it's like you fly out, we interview you, and then you move. Because if it doesn't work out, we don't want to be put in a situation where like, I moved here for you. But we've had people that moved here and then tried to get a job and it worked out. But we do have remote employees, like Jimmy's remote, Candy is remote, and a gamer's wife is remote. But we can't have a remote employee make packages, for instance. So that's the position we're hiring for. So, what is the best filter? The one that you will service regularly. For me, that is sponge filters. For you, it might be a hang-on back. For the next person, it's a canister filter. For the next person, it's an under gravel filter. Whatever you will use is actually the best. What someone else says is the best for them. It might be the best for you also, but until you use it, you won't know. All right. Cheese is a mac and cheese, the realest food. It could be. Dean. Oh yeah, I have Joel too. There's 15. See? I had lunch with Joel and Dean, Joel of Corvus Oskin, the YouTube channel, yesterday. And we were talking the fine art of mac and cheese, like Kraft mac and cheese versus homemade mac and cheese. Because Dean is culinary instructor. Joel has been a chef for many, many years previous to this stuff he does. See, I knew I'd forget people. I always do. It's hard to remember at least 15. There could be 16 at this point, and I don't even know. So, do all my plants have snails? Yes. The reality is no, but saying no is not smart, because if you get a snail, you're going to lose your mind. So, there are snails in every single one of our tanks. We run nerite snails to eat algae and just preen plants. That being said, you could get a pond snail, which I personally find to be very beneficial. But it's my opinion that if you're not buying tissue cultured plants, anyone that is saying that their plants are always snail free or duckweed free, they're not being truthful, and they're just refunding money when that doesn't happen that way. What state are we in? We are in Washington State. How can I propagate water sprite easily? Once it grows, you can just pull off a bunch and plant it. Pretty easy. Ooh, I want to show off my shirt. This is hashtag might be sponsored. And the reason I say that is because I ordered them, and then I think I got the money back on my credit card, or something weird was going down while checkout. Maybe I got charged twice and then refunded one. But I ordered these from fishcauldron.com, which is a fan now has a store, an online store, which is Fish Cauldron, and we'll be opening a retail store. But this is my favorite timely shirt because it has to do with Halloween. That's right. It's a ghost knife that says boo. Clever. And it's a nice tri-blend. I think it was like 30 bucks or something. But I was willing to pay that because I like the shirt, and I thought it was clever. And it's a Halloween shirt. The ghost knife says boo. I love it. And so if you want to get that kind of crap, go buy it from them. I have no idea if there's any in stock. I know, and this is a call out, your website is terrible in the fact that it needs some optimizations. If you want me to go over with you, I will. But you can, like, if you click on men's shirt, this never pops up. But if you go to holiday shirts, this will pop up. So there's some optimizations there to be done. And so it's on there somewhere. I don't know what it's called. I don't know if it's called like Boo shirt or Ghost shirt or whatever that shirt is. But I got another shirt. It's not a holiday one, but I got one other one. And they've got other shirts too. Just not my jam. Yes. All right. Found you through the podcast and needed to show some support with a membership. And I put my first order in online. Well, thank you, Toric X. I'm always fascinated by people that find us by the podcast because, unfortunately, truth be told, the podcast is like way out in my mind of like, oh yeah, that's right, we do a thing. I forget we pay money to do that. And so it's always like, whoa, yeah. I will say, overwhelming support from you guys that I met at both Aquatic Experience and Aquashella that love the podcast, listening to all your work, and I'm going to try to maybe do more than one. And I say try because I don't want to promise you something I can't do. So I'm going to see. Ooh, Devlin's Fish and Fins got a good idea. I want to see a clown knife fish with a red balloon, like from It, right? Clever. I like it. Probably too late to launch it this season, but Turbofish. Maybe tuck that away. Ooh, another good little tip. His wife is the one that does all the art and everything, which is super cool. So it's literally like mom and pop shop. And the quality is good. I was afraid, I was petrified that I was going to order these shirts and they were going to be shipped from like Teespring, which I know even I have shirts from Teespring, but the quality is just not, it's not the $30 shirt quality that I was paying for, but I was a little afraid of like, oh no, if they come in bad, like wear it once and then it's faded type of deal. But these are actually great. I haven't watched it yet though. I literally put it on. Ooh, we can start that. Team Reese's versus Team Snickers. I got another one for you guys. My wife would never, ever, ever wear something without washing it first. Whereas I'm like, no, for sure I would wear it. Now this came in a sealed up plastic bag and all that. Like, there's no way anyone's ever worn this before. You could make an argument like, well, there's probably inks and stuff that are gonna get on my skin. Yeah, that's probably true. But for me, I'm like, no way. This thing's clean enough. I'll wear it. So I don't know where you guys fall on that, but I'm definitely brand new. I'm wearing it. I'll do it. What should you feed newly hatched Aranda goldfish fry and when? I would feed live baby brine shrimp, one of the best things you could do. And then when would probably be like morning and night. If you got more time, feed them more often. So. But I'm hearing Corey's wearing a women's shirt. That's right, because it's not in the men's section. That could be. I wouldn't even care. I literally don't care. This shirt is awesome. And if it's a women's cut and I look this good, whoo, I'm gonna strut my stuff and wear this shirt if I look that good. All I'm saying, if I fit the cut of a women's cut shirt, my gym routine is doing way better than I thought. Do you guys have any of those discounted return lights left? I don't know, Gloria. You would want to email team side and have Robert get back to you? I don't know. Because we put all those on like sale or whatever. That being said, if you were really looking for one, you could talk to Robert and go, hey, let me know when you get one of these. But it could be months, could be tomorrow. We have no idea. Just don't be super shady and be like, oh, yeah, I'm waiting for one. Hold on, let me order it. All right, let me return it. Oh, I heard you just got the light that I wanted back in stock, right? Just don't be that person. Which, you would think no one would do that. I swear, people have probably done that to us. Whips World's running 2 C360 canisters, 2 Penguin 350 hang-on backs, 2 Co-op large sponge filters on a 210. Am I wasting my money? Yes. No, I have to qualify that a little bit. Depending on how much stock is in there, maybe not. The reality is, yes, you're wasting your money. I would wager that probably one of those canister filters set up correctly would be enough biological filtration with gravel in there. Now, you could have something that requires a crazy amount of flow. I hear that. We could address that in other ways too, but yes, in my opinion, you've got quite a bit of filtration. You might need it all though, but without quantifying what's in there, you know, like in here I have an understocked 800-gallon aquarium. I don't need that much filtration, but if it was overstocked, I need a ton. So, yeah. That's right. Did I hear you forgot about me? I did forget about you, Joel. I'm a bad man. And I called Turbofish out in the same stream. So, whew. I know. I'm making people I like a lot probably not like me a lot. But that's the way of the co-op. That's what I do. How can you tell if your guppies are pregnant? Usually if you have a male and female together, they're always going to be pregnant. If you're asking, how can I know when they're getting closer to giving birth? They give birth about once a month, and when they get real close, they're going to start to get a little bit boxy. Like, it just like, oh, there's not much more give in that stomach. So it almost can form like little points, like rounded points, as opposed to being round. Now, maybe this is a good example. So maybe, you know, they're getting fatter, but eventually it almost like, you almost see the points come out a little bit, and you go, oh, yep, it's any day now. And if you see that a couple of times, then you can go, oh, all right, that's the look I'm looking for. All right, Brenda Ends, welcome to become a member. Ooh, are we even close to getting a new emoji? Let me see. I don't know if I can see. How do I get a refund for my auto feeder? It's a piece of junk and I'm not happy. You would go on to the website and then click refund and then read the paragraph that's there that says email us and ask for a refund, in which case we would investigate if it's broken, we would refund it. B, if it's working perfectly fine, you're more than welcome to send it back to us and we will refund your money. Easy as that. We have pretty much the easiest return policy that exists because we make it easy. So yes, very easy reading and we'll get you taken care of. All right. What was I doing? I've got another super chat to answer, but I read that super chat and it blocked my brain. I can't remember. I'm sure you guys remember remind me what I was doing. I have an albino peacock cichlid that has a hard bump on one of its pelvic fins. Any idea what it could be? Usually it's a cyst. Like if you've been watching the channel for a very long time, I had a cyst in my eyelid. I don't remember which one it was, but it tends to be like a blocked pore or something like that that turns into like almost like cartilage-like material. And that can happen on a fish too. And the only way I've ever been able to alleviate it is to reduce stress. So if you can reduce a lot of stress, then sometimes it'll go down. But sometimes it'll be there forever too. Like it just gets built in there. If it was a show quality fish, people would typically like cut it out. I don't recommend doing that though. If it's not affecting the fish, I just let it be. All right. I don't remember what I was doing, but we'll keep going anyway. Can I please talk about breeding longfin serpe tetras? They're going to be an egg scatterer. I've never bred them both longfin or normal fin. So this would be based on what I know about breeding lots of tetras. Not that I've bred a ton of tetras. Don't want to claim that. But researching and talk to Dean and that kind of stuff, typically you create a false bottom, and that is with maybe like some mesh, like needlepoint mesh is a real popular one from a craft store. Or you can do a bed of marbles. But the goal is they lay all these eggs, they fall down, and then the fish can't go down and eat them, right? So then you remove the parents, and you're going to get these very tiny fry that come up that look like little hairs. And from there, you're going to want infusoria or green water to get them to the stage where they can eat baby brine shrimp. So it can be a little bit labor intensive. Luckily, you can spawn a whole bunch at once, So you can go, look, I made thousands. Because the same amount of work to raise 1,000 as it is to raise 2, pretty much. So, my wife says, please specify we only return for unused sellable merchandise. Yes, that is true. Let me think. Yes, because if it's broken, we refund your money. If it's unused and you want to return it, yes. So it's all spelled out when you read the page. That's what I know. You know, if it's a broken product, there's no reason to return a broken thing. Like, once you prove it's broken, we don't need to waste money sending it around or waste resources in the world. We just refund your money. So yes, I mean, technically, if you're that guy and you're super angry, you can just like smash it to a billion pieces and be like, I don't know what happened. It exploded. You know, for the most part, we're pretty lenient and like, look, if you're that angry, just take your money back. We don't care. Like, we're only interested in, I say partnering, like selling to people that want to buy our stuff. We're never like, I'm not here to be like, no, I'm gonna strong arm someone for their 20 bucks on an auto feeder. I'm gonna defend it till it dies. Like, we'll just take the loss. We'll move on, and we'll you know, work with people that are like, oh, I like what you're doing and the way you're doing it, and yeah, I mean, honestly, for those of you that had to deal with us, I would think 98% of you have been like, wow, painless situation, unless something crazy has gone outside of the realm of normalcy for us. So that's what I hope for. I hope it to be easy. If we're not doing things right, we want to make it easy. So how many African dwarf frogs can go in a 10-gallon with a BETTA, one mystery snail? Okay, my brain. How many not adult, African dwarf frogs can go in a 10-gallon with one BETTA, one mystery snail, and 2 African dwarf frogs? So there's already 2 in there. I mean, you could probably push it with like 4 more, but my question would be, how are you getting the enjoyment out of 6? Like, I've got 3 dogs right now, and there's a case that maybe I would enjoy a 4th, but at 5 and 6 and 7 dogs, I don't have enough time for all those dogs. So I would same thing to you. Like, I mean, I get it. You're probably enjoying those African dwarf frogs, but will you enjoy them even more with more? Right? In that tank. I get it. You might be like, oh no, I need some at my desk at work and I need some at home. That makes a lot of sense. But if it's like, no, my one tank, I just need more of the same thing. It's like, they don't really school, they don't really interact with each other. So, but, you know, the reality is probably more than you want to keep can live in that 10-gallon, honestly. So, all right. The very first order I did from Corey, they forgot the root tabs. One simple email, and 2 days later I had them. No questions, none of the mess from other online stores. Yeah, that's our MO. Our MO is not get caught up in trying to defend like a $5 transaction. The goal is spend time making more sales, making more people happy, doing that kind of stuff. So, and you can get drowned in negativity, and it's bad for myself, bad for Candy, bad for my wife, bad for anyone that's interacting with negativity. So we try to move on as fast as possible from it. And negativity means, it could mean the post office screwed up, could mean anything happened, right? Like, it's like, oh, that sucks. Like, oh, that light got bent in half. Ugh. Well, we lost $200. Send them another one. You know, like, it just, we can dwell on it all day, and then we get like, oh man, we got to sell 10 more lights to make that up. But we can just focus on selling 10 more lights. All right. All right, where are we at? We are at David Gilkinson. Love my aquarium co-op auto feeder. It's best on the market. And right there, you have the problem of creating a product. Someone will love it. Someone will hate it. It's like anything, you know. Some say Snickers are the best. Some say Reese's are the best. You know. Different strokes for different folks. That's what you got, you know. We're only looking to make the best auto feeder for 50% of the entire world. So the other 50%, Hopefully someone else develops the best auto feeder for you. We're just taking the other 50%. That's all we're trying to do. All right. Oh no, everyone loves, well not, I shouldn't say everyone loves the auto feeder, but everyone is defending. This is that negativity. I don't like when other people have to defend us also. Like that sucks too. But Ali says, the Aquarium Co-op feeder is the best auto feeder. I don't even have one. Hashtag be kind. Yes, see, that's what I hate. I hate that this negativity, which is fine. Like, I'm not trying to hide it. Someone doesn't like our auto feeder, we'll take care of it. But each one of these, I'm not helping answering someone's question, which that's always my number one MO, so. Mike P, that's funny. This super chat's garbage. How do I get a refund? I bet you could petition YouTube enough to get it back. I bet you. So. Would frozen brine shrimp suffice for fry? Frozen baby brine, yes. But actual, like, brine, it would have to be a pretty big fry of, like maybe convict cichlids that are already, like, a month old. Yeah. Can you sell fish on Facebook again? If you're speaking like us, we didn't sell fish on Facebook. But if you're speaking like in general, did they lift that ban? I don't believe so. I think Facebook is still no live pets to be sold on Facebook. EBT Chef says, I love your products in general, but the auto feeder is not one of them. Hey, no worries. Like I said, we can get you taken care of, buddy. Perfect timing. I need your advice. I have swordtails. It's got a money sign there. I don't know what that means. But I have swordtails and small bristlenose in my 3-liter tank, and they just gave birth. How should I separate them right away? Should I separate them right away? Let me think. You got swordtails and small bristlenose. Oh, it's not 3-liter. What is the dollar sign? That's a 4-liter. It's like a 1 gallon in a 1 gallon tank. I don't know. I feel like maybe it's supposed to be 64-liter tank. I'm looking at the keyboard going, that's the caret sign and the dollar sign. So maybe 64, what's that? That's going to be divided by 4 is 16, right? Is that right? Sounds right. 16 gallons? I think you're fine. Like, usually, like, sometimes adult swordtails will prey on baby bristlenose, but the other way around shouldn't be a problem. If a tank is fully cycled, will there always be zero ammonia for the life of the tank? What is the best way to keep a healthy tank in terms of nitrogen cycle? Community tanks with moderate plants. In theory, it depends on the definition of cycled. We could get into semantics about that. But yes, for the most part, in an established tank, should relatively be unmeasurable ammonia almost all the time. There could be a time where if your water has chloramine, you're doing water changes, you could detect ammonia. There could be a really heavy feeding could do it technically. But for, yes, should basically be at 0 always. Like in a farm scenario, maybe not always, but yes. I lost $1,000 of hybrid striped bass because of a complex electronic timer that I bought to replace the old school dial and pin type that the Aquarium Co-op feeder is. Yikes. That doesn't sound fun. Must be aquaculture? I'm guessing for hybrid striped bass? Yes. Oh, Dean's in the fish room. Or in the fish room. In the house. I don't have houses anymore. I have fish room. That's what I have. I was just wondering what you think I should feed Betta fry. Live baby brine shrimp. I know I sound like a broken record. I mean, the brine shrimp I sell is a terrible deal in that you only get a vial. But it's really good if you just have one tank or one spawn. But, you know, these eggs right here, the 90%, 16 ounce, they're very expensive, and this thing's like $60 or more plus shipping. Like Dean was saying, he buys 12 cans at a time. He uses a lot of eggs. And, you know, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm recommending a product that I don't even really sell. That's how important brine shrimp is. It is on my to-do list. I do want to, I told Randy, I'm like, when we're in China, let's see if we can work with someone to get some eggs, because the eggs that are in the United States are basically locked down by San Francisco Bay, right? So I'm going to have to go outside of US to find eggs, and then we can test hatch rates and all that, and I have no idea if it's like a giant snafu to try and bring those into the country. I have no idea. But I would love to sell, like I was trying to explain it earlier, I don't have a package that's the right size, but maybe like brine shrimp eggs that's like half as much as this, so that it's like, oh cool, I bought $20 worth of eggs instead of $60 or $80 worth of eggs, or $6 worth of eggs, or whatever we sell that for. I think it's $6 or $7. All right, if I'm breeding live bearers, when should you separate the males from females to avoid inbreeding? It takes a crazy amount of generations. So in general, a lot. And what I mean that by like the Texas Stock Center, they're 50 generations deep, and they're not even seeing like a higher level of deformities. So a lot. All right. I added some fine filter pad to one side of the auto feeder outlet to cut the smallest feeding dose in half. Works great for my little, with a little work. All right. The other way you can do that with all feeders too is like a little piece of Scotch tape will accomplish that on the outlet as well. Really depends on the type of food and all that kind of stuff. When you start getting to like crazy small amounts, it gets really difficult. And that, again, what that becomes is you could make a very small portion feeding auto feeder, and inherently by focusing on that, you'd have an auto feeder that would be bad at feeding larger aquariums or medium size. Because let's be real, it feeds like a medium sized aquarium. I don't use an easy auto feeder on the 800 because it would take like that whole drum per feeding. So that doesn't make sense either. So you're trying to go, how can I help more people, like the majority of the people? So, experience with a full-grown Chinese algae eaters. The biggest ones I ever saw were like this big, and they came in, and they were kind of cool, but they get a bad rap. And I myself have only ever kept them with turtles, so I don't even know the legit aggression level because I've never kept them and really experimented with them. So I've always trusted other people, because every customer that has ever gotten one from Petco PetSmart always comes back with like, oh my god, this thing's a terror. So I actually don't know what fishes it really pair well with, because I haven't done that. Is brine shrimp still good for Malawi cichlids? I've been careful to not give too much protein and give fiber to avoid bloat. Robert, I would do the spirulina brine shrimp. That's got a lot more roughage in it. And I found it to work really well. I wouldn't feed it like every day, but you know, maybe up to 3 times a week. Bacopa caroliniana, is it the same lemon bacopa that is native to Florida? I don't know if it's the same one that's native to Florida, but Florida does have Bacopa caroliniana growing there. I don't know if it's native though. Yeah. Is this a crinum? Yes, it is. Crinum calamastratum. Ooh, did we get any of those in yet? I've been ordering them every week. Let me see. Because even I kind of want some more. Let me see. Is it in? We do have some. I might sneak down depending on how many we have. Like if we only got like 20 left, I won't go get any because I don't want to. I want you guys to get them. I float a coarse sponge on the top of my tank and pour my water change water on it to stop the water from disturbing the substrate. That makes sense. I can see that. Are German blue rams aggressive? I mean, they're on an aggressive level. So, like, would they eat shrimp? Yes. But would they beat on stuff? Not so much. That's a hard one. You know, it's like saying are cats aggressive? It's like, well, they're passive aggressive. Like, let me knock that off the counter type of thing. And they could claw you if they were chasing something, but I don't think they're actively aggressive, if you will. Let's see here. Yes, in 30 minutes, we will be hanging out in the KG Tropicals live stream. What does that mean? That means I'm going to go hang out in the chat, and I'm going to encourage all of you guys to come with me, and because John's a good dude, and I like him, and that's why part of the reason I moved it to Thursdays was so that I could help introduce you guys to him, because I know a lot of you are looking for more stuff to listen to, and he puts on a good show with his wife Lisa as well. So, yeah. My wife says we didn't get many crinum, but we did get some. See, like I know I ordered a lot, but what I order and what I get are two different things. So let me check in on my list. I could have other little announcement things that I should be talking about. Oh, a couple of them. Shrimp King products, so like Shrimp King foods and some of the salts and that kind of stuff. We have it 16% off. You add them to the cart, and at the checkout, they'll show up 16% off. So we got that sale running. And then we have discontinued Northfin products. What does that mean? That means they're all 20% off on the website, and that's because they just sold terribly. And it was a product that I brought on because people asked me to bring on, and again, I kind of got burned, if you will. Not burned, but like, they just never, you know, some of them were like, oh, we sold 3 in 4 months? Like, ugh. Like that's a comparison where like another food you might be like, oh, we sold 180 of them, you know. So it's like they're taking up space in the warehouse. And with products like that, one of the things I think about is if we have a product that's not selling very well, that's more steps the employees have to take to get your guys' stuff. They get out slower. They got to take more steps, harder on their feet. So we like to continually look at worse performing products and kind of cull them from our system. And unfortunately, Northfin is one of those. The outlier there is the BETTA pellet. We're looking for someone that is willing to sell just that to us, but a lot of retailers that kind of want you to bring the line on. It's like, well, I kind of just want that BETTA pellet. Please? So we'll see. But yes, we got those going on. Where did my handy dandy list go? Oh yes, promote the blog. So yes, we have great blog articles coming out every week, which you're probably seeing on the community page. But one of the things I want you to do is I want you to go to our website, whether you live in the US or not, doesn't matter, and make an account. Once you make an account, you'll get our newsletter. Our newsletter includes things like sales sometimes, not very often, because we don't do them that often. But every time we release a blog article or we're going to be at an event, and part of it is if you fill out all the data, if I'm going to come and speak in Iowa, we can send a newsletter to just people in Iowa that says, hey, did you know in 3 months I'm going to speak at your club, right? So by making an account, you get kind of all the insider info, and we can target you. And with targeting you, I'm going to try to give you stuff for free. That's what we do. And yeah, I just don't talk about it enough. And I think we're putting a lot of resources into making these great blog posts, and I think you guys like it. The feedback's been great, which I appreciate. And I think Irene's doing a good job with it. You know, we work on it together somewhat. And I say somewhat because some I'm more involved and some I'm more hands-off. I mean, I always read them, proof them, make slight adjustments, but some will be a topic that needs much more of mine, and some she's very fluent in writing about that. All right. I think that's all the things I have to mention, which means I can answer more questions. Hey, Corey, I know you focus on keeping prices low to start, but will you have a sale on some Black Friday items? Or items on Black Friday? Yes, probably. I've got to catch up on videoing. Now that my voice is fully returned, I got to make a bunch of videos to catch up in the filming cycle. From there, I'm going to spend a lot of time looking at prices and making sure we're profitable. Now, you would think that you sell so much stuff, of course you're profitable. We find stuff all the time where you mix, you know, like you mix this, and this together, and you get free shipping, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, this had to ship differently than this, and we spent $26 on shipping? What happened? Right? So stuff like that. And also I know that in January, another like 5 to 6% shipping increase is coming from USPS, which is like, oh, come on, we need a break here. And I was talking with Randy today, in fact, of I'm not sure what's going to happen in the shipping or e-commerce landscape, because now it'll be, you know, we had a price increase on shipping already once this year. twice, I think, actually, because it was 2 bumps. And then the tariffs, and now another pricing increase is going to make it so that possibly we might not be able to have free shipping at $49, or at least not even us, but like lots of stores, right? Some, like, how can they absorb all of those costs and still turn a profit? And so I really want to deep dive and look at it and go, are there products that aren't going to work out? It's typically oddball, bulky stuff where you're like, oh, wait a second. That always costs, like lights. Lights are a killer, because the minute you order a light, anything else you order, if you order a light and this, costs us $25 to ship the light, and then this, the minimum it can cost us is about $12. So already, if you order a light and this, we're at $38 shipping in our costs. Then we have to pay an employee, and then you pay with a credit card, so there's percentages there. Like, all of a sudden, you're like, whoa, we made $1.17 on that. Like, dang, right? So we got to look at some of that stuff and go, okay, what can we do here? You know, it gets worse too. Like, oh, you bought that, and then you bought a box of rocks. Like, oh, so this ships different from the rocks. It ships different from the lights. Oof. You know, and we got to look at that. And then once we reorganize all of that and make sure it's good to go, then we can go, well, where are there some room for some of this? You know, I've got some stuff right here that I do plan on doing. Got to make sure some of our vendors come in on their side. I've been working with them like, hey, who wants to do some deals coming up for Black Friday and Christmas? And some people go, oh, maybe us, right? So there's probably going to be some stuff. But until I see the invoice, I don't want to get you guys all hyped on it and then go, you said, I waited, it didn't happen. So, working on it though. What is spirulina? And is a dry Repashy powder a good option for fry? Yes, that's a very good point. Dry Repashy foods is a very good fine powder. It's got sometimes a little bit of chunks in it too. Not big, but a little bit. Kind of like taco seasoning, right? Bring it back to tacos. Mostly, but then there's like the dehydrated onion. You're like, ah, it's a little chunky. Kind of that's what's going on with Repashy. Spirulina is a type of algae that can come in a powder form, but it's used, and it's kind of like getting lots of greens in the food, basically. That's mostly what it is. A new Dean video fund. Oh, we need more Dean wisdom in the universe. We were supposed to film a video yesterday. We ran out of time. Dean had to run. I had to run. I had date night with my wife, and we scheduled it for next Wednesday. So we hope to film next Wednesday. But we did work. We worked on the video. He worked on it. I cleaned it. That's being truthful. Let's see here. And I missed that, by the way. I don't know how I miss things, but Hung Chow says, addition to previous super chat, I do a 35% water change Friday. Okay, 7 squirts after. Would water changes affect? Okay, would water changes affect the 2 squirts a day routine? What is the optimum for consistent growth? The optimum is, as long as you have 20 parts per million nitrates that derives from Easy Green, that is optimum, right? So my question to you is, are you changing water out of habit, or are you changing water because you have more than 40 parts per million nitrates? Most people, they end up changing water out of habit. You're taking some Easy Green out, and then you're dosing Easy Green back in. So a lot of times you could really relax your water change schedule and get a lot of benefit out of that. So, I mean, a lot of benefit in like that you don't have to do that work anymore. And maybe you can keep another aquarium, and you're saving money on Easy Green, right? All right. Old fish guy says, date nights with the wife is important, and I read it as like denitrating is important. Yes, I might do a little bit with the fish. You never know. All right. I have to leave my pea puffer for 2 weeks at Christmas. No available fish keeper. We won't eat Vibrobites for a vacation feeder. What should I do for food? See if you can find any local store that sells live blackworms. If you can get some live blackworms, you can seed the gravel, and that'll get you through that. In a worst case scenario, just make that a fat butterball of a pea puffer. It'll lose weight while you're gone, but it'll be alright. I won't love it, but, you know, sometimes you're just stuck between, you know, a rock and a pea puffer. What are you going to do? How long have I been growing that crinum? That crinum is probably 5 or 6 years old at this point. Pretty old. The one that I have floating that looks like garbage at the moment is probably only 18 months old, and it's pretty, not quite that big, but almost that big. And they basically do nothing for about 4 months, and then they're like, ooh, look at that, putting on a little bit of growth. And then after a year, you're like, hey, I'm impressed by this plant. And then from there, you start making little babies and that kind of stuff. So it's a very slow to replicate plant. Ooh, I think that's a good idea. Casey Wagner says, you could put a pile of small snails in a container with holes just big enough for them to get out, but the puffer could not get in them. And they would, like, feed over time. That's a smart solution. I like that. I haven't tried it, but I feel like you could work on a system like that of, like... Because what my brain went to is, like, what if I had large ram's horn snails, and they were breeding inside this container, and only the babies could ever get out. Like they'd lay the clutch in there, they'd hatch, and then eventually babies would get out. Then you'd have like a little, it's like a snail auto feeder that literally feeds live snails out. I am 36 years young. Yes, that is how old. I like that idea. That's very smart. Never heard of that, but might be genius. Gotta try it. Is that the same crinum from my old goldfish tank? Ooh. I think that answer is yes. I think it went there, and then it went to Murphy's tank. Murphy got big enough that we need to make some room, so then it came here. Yeah, I think it is. Hard to say. I'd have to really think about that. I think so. Can I get frozen baby brine? And I have pond snails, but he's picking at them and not killing them. Matthew Groom. I gotta figure out what your original question was. I'm not seeing it. Makes me look bad. Offers no context for anyone. Will Hamilton's got 40 parts per million nitrate out of the tap, and plants aren't helping. Oof. So probably what's going on is the plants aren't helping because either A, you've got too many fish and they can't keep up. B, they're missing basic building blocks, like maybe they're missing phosphate and potassium and that kind of stuff. I would probably see if you could take your water into like a Home Depot for like a free test, get a little bit better insight on it, and then start trying to use like C-Chem products to go, okay, here's some phosphate, some potassium, and the micronutrients, and see if you can get them to start absorbing those nitrates faster. Let's see here. The other thing you could do besides the live snails, you could try doing a scud factory as well. So like, you know, pinhole, they can crawl out. Not a pinhole, but a little bit bigger than that. I think that could work too. Fish to pair with tiger barbs. I really like clown loaches if you got the space. Otherwise, what would I do? I would do some kind of loach. Maybe a like a zebra loach if you didn't have that much space, or a dwarf chain loach. They're just nice and zippy, and they go well together. All right. How does water softeners affect the water? Does it just drop the pH? Oof. I am not... Do I read normal chats? That's all I've been reading for like the last 20 minutes, bro. I am not 100% adept with water softeners. You add salt, which makes the water feel softer when you're like showering and washing your hands and that kind of stuff. But in general, actually raises the TDS and hardness of the water. But because I don't have one, because I have really soft water, I haven't mastered this thing. I've only lived vicariously through other people that have had water softeners that might drive into our store you know, or stores a store I worked at previously, and so I had to like learn through them. I don't have firsthand like using it every day type of thing. Water softener pulls out GH. I see, part of it is I know there's different medias for a water softener, and I just don't see how normal I don't see how normal rock salt would pull out general hardness. So I do know there's other pellets though, and it totally could, but I'm not familiar with that type. Do we deliver to Puerto Rico? I don't think we do currently. We were having so many problems with Puerto Rico with like just mail getting lost and everything that we just stopped shipping there. You could try it. If it goes through on the website, we do. If it doesn't, we don't. I'm not 100% sure where we're at with that, but I know we were having quite a few problems. Just, I don't know why they were like getting lost or whatever. So, can you put an assassin snail in a community tank with shrimp and a betta? Sure. Yeah. Unless if you starve them, maybe you'll have a problem, but I think it'd be fine. Yeah, it doesn't lower the pH at all. Yeah, I don't know of a water softener lowering pH either, but I know there's different systems and that kind of stuff. pH of my tanks went from 7.2 to 6.3. My advice would be test your tap water, put an air stone in it and a glass of water, test it the next day. Is it the same? If it is, great. If it's not, they're injecting something and it's gassing off. The answer, if it is always going to sit down low, is use crushed coral to buffer it up. That's what I do. You can use other things, but that's the easiest way. I use 1 pound per 10 gallons sprinkled in the gravel. We sell insane amounts of crushed coral, and most people that get on the crushed coral train are like, I'd never go back. It's awesome. So that's what we do. All right. My 7-year-old wants to set up his 20 long with pea puffers. How would you set up this tank with plants and substrate? I would grab something like Eco Complete, and if you don't have hard water or higher pH, I would probably add a little bit of crushed coral, and then I would just grab like cryptocorns and other easy plants. That way they're gonna have some success and have fun. Did I ever end up breeding laser cories? I don't remember a follow-up video. There are videos. Yes, we made hundreds of those things. It was always in the like a day in the fish room series. Yeah. I have an Oranda whose wen is starting to fall apart. I believe caused by an injury plus other goldfish nibbling on it. Separated and treating with Kenaplex and salt for 4 days. He's swimming and eating well, but no improvement. It sounds like that's what I would have done. Yeah, Yana. Separating for sure important. Good food and salt is what I'd be doing, and just, I know it can take quite a long time. It looks bad too. It's like, oh geez, what's wrong with that thing? But then 3 or 4 months later, you're like, all right, it's missing, but not so bad. Yeah. My wife chimed in, who would know more than I would, because she probably answers this question like candy 20 times a week. We don't ship to Guam or Puerto Rico anymore. USPS was too unreliable in those areas. I don't know why, but we kept making exceptions, and then like, what happened? Why is this such a, you know, you'd ship to the same customer, like 2 would go through and then 3 wouldn't. You're like, what is going on? We were losing a lot of money with that. So we just kind of, unfortunately, had to be like, no, we can't do it. Dang it. Can you recommend a pump for my auto water change system for my upcoming fish room? It's going to be like your old fish room coming out of a 375-gallon tote. I ran 2 of them over the time. One was an Eheim, like 1262, and the other one was a Mag Drive 9. Either one worked. In fact, I believe I used one of each on the different systems. Just make sure you're using an aquarium pump that doesn't have oil, so if it ever gives way, it's not just going to pump oil into all of your tanks. That'd be horrible. And the Eheim is more energy efficient. That being said, it doesn't run very often. So see whatever one makes sense to your wallet is what I would do. Although I might be tempted to get one of the variable speed pumps on Amazon, one of the Jabo pumps, because they seem to be fairly reliable and Well, but the energy efficiency, we just don't care. If they're only going to turn on for 2 minutes once a day, it honestly doesn't even really matter. So, but they're better priced. So I guess that's why I was bringing it up. Is crushed coral a bad substrate with rooted plants? No, it's one of my favorite substrates actually. Yeah. Why doesn't the walk-in store have female guppies or endlers? I don't know. I mean, we do have both. If you're talking about our store, you must be walking in when they're just sold out. But like female guppies, for sure, we order insane amounts of those. Female endlers, they don't sell nearly as well as the males, but even last time I was at the store, I was mentioning to Robert, I was like, you know, endlers sell better if you remove those females out of that tank and move them to a different tank. And so I know we've had them. I don't know if you're talking about us or just stores in general. Oh, here we go. If your water softener is adding to the TDS, you need to increase your backwash to flush out the salt used in the backwash, I believe. I don't know. That's a level technical of, like, that's the difference between someone that, like, when I give advice from my personal experience and when I give advice based on what I've read and experienced from other people. This is in a realm of, I don't have the personal experience, so it's really hard to give you an articulate answer that makes sense. Sloppy Joes are awesome if you add a packet of taco flavoring. I can only see that as true. That's got to be a true fact. I've got 5 adorable Corydoras habrosus in today, and they're incredibly active in the water column. Please tell me they don't jump. No, they shouldn't. Not that I know of. I never really had that problem. Any idea if biohome media will raise general hardness? I have no idea. I've never tested for that. I think maybe I've had biohome once in my hands. So I've never done any testing of GH. But for the most part, almost anything you're adding to your aquarium that you're not intentionally using to raise GH should be being pulled out by plants or water changes anyway. Yeah. Will I do any tank stocking idea videos? Any more of them? Yeah, probably. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. Maybe Sunday. Who knows? What's the best water conditioner? I'm glad you ask, because I have a half-used bottle of Fritz Complete, and it's got a pump head. That's why it's the best. Otherwise, all of the chlorinators are really so similar that it doesn't matter. But that is my go-to one. That's the one I personally use. It's my favorite right now. There might be a better one down the road, but in a pinch, any of them will do it. Any will work. Like when you're at a convention, then, you know, you'll use anything. I was told, hold on. I was told you, Corey, didn't want the female guppies in the store. Hasn't been any for weeks. We might not want your female guppies. Like, in general, males sell way better than females. I don't know the whole story here. I just know that we do order female guppies from trusted sources. So, I don't know, like, you might be saying, oh, I have 30 female yellow cobra guppies. In which case, no, we don't want those. But if you had assorted female guppies, maybe we do. Or maybe you can't bring it in on the day that Robert needs you to bring it in. I have no idea. I'm not in that loop. But I will say, I would find it hard to believe we don't have female guppies in the store, because that's like an essential. That being said, I'm not there physically right now. I've only been there pretty much every week for the last week, and I always remember seeing them. But again, I'm not full in on it, so. Give us your spiel on rice fish. I mean, there's not much of a spiel other than they're the best fish on the planet, and I'm secretly breeding them up with Dean to take over the world. But in general, they're cool looking little fish. Ooh, water changes. I gotta change my water change schedule because that's on the live stream. Just cool little fish that lay eggs on their anal fin, and then they brush them off onto a plant, and they're relatively easy to breed, and I can overwinter them outside, and they're super cool. That's all. They're just hard to get a hold of, and eventually, you know, given enough time, they'll be easier to get a hold of because we'll breed 1 billion of them. I hope. All right, what's the best way to keep a healthy tank? Hold on, I read that wrong. What's the best way to keep a tank healthy? Ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate good. I lose fish randomly every so often. Flakes fed in the morning. Frozen bloodworms at night. Community is no signs of diseases. That's really hard to diagnose. And what I mean by that is, like, without being there could be a giant red flag. You know, you could be changing water too often. You could be stressing fish out. You could have a bully. You could have, you know, oh, my flake food's been open for 6 years. Like, oh, you're feeding rancid food. It could be, you know, oh, the frozen food sat out on the counter one night, and then I put it back in the freezer. I've been slowly feeding rancid food that way. Could be you've got a stray electrical current. Could be an internal parasite. Could be, you know, so like with all those examples, you're like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of things there. In general, it sounds like you're doing the right things. You're feeding different types of food. You're probably changing some water. Maybe you got some plants going on in there. But knowing, like, is it one type of fish? Is it once a day? Is it once a week? Is it 5 one week and none the next? Like, can we notice any patterns? And that's kind of where you have to play detective and like, what is going on here? Oh, 2 days after I change water, one dies? Maybe something with this water change has got it going on. I'm not quite sure. Is there a video on how the tank behind you does water changes? Yes. At this point, there's 900 videos. There's pretty much a video on everything. I mean, not quite, but especially stuff that's been around for years. We've got how we built it. We've got the whole setup of it. We've got how we built the sump. We've got so many aspects. Now, finding it, you're going to have to watch quite a few videos because there might not be like, hey, look at this. This is how the 800-gallon changes water video. But it's probably hidden in like, oh, they were setting up the tank. Ah, I see how it's going to work now. No water changes really, but might be a bully. I do have plants. So I would test water parameters, make sure nothing's getting out of the norm there. Like, oh, maybe hardness is creeping up a little bit. Maybe pH is sinking down a little bit. My goldfish just pooped. You know, I'm going to tell you a crazy secret. When you keep animals, they go to the bathroom. I know. I'm the bearer of bad news, but sometimes that even happens while you're live. You know, sometimes you're walking your dog and people are like, oh, can I pet your dog? And then your dog poops and you're like, oops. You know, sometimes that happens. Why don't I like Universal Rocks? Because they take what you want to buy. If you're a guy like me and you're going to give them $700, and then, do I have a good example that's not going to get me in trouble? I'm looking for the right piece of paper that I don't have. Dang it. This will probably do it. Let's say you paid $700 for this nice box from Universal Aquariums, and they're like, oh, you'd like it to look like a box. Great, well, when we ship it, we'll ship it like this and charge you $125 to ship it. And don't worry, when you get it, just put it in the sun and it will relax back to its original form. And then guess what? After a bunch of emails and stuff later, it never relaxed back, and I still paid full price. And every day I owned it, it was just a further letdown. That's why I don't like them. It also took over a month for them to ship it. They had my $700 and then delayed shipping by over a month. So there's that as well. That story is too long for the amount of time I have. Yeah, that's the abbreviated story of like, there's some more intricacies there, but I think you get the gist. All right, we got 1 minute. We are all heading, and I mean all of us. How many we got here? We got at least like 17 people. I know it. I don't even know how many people we have. Like 1,100 people. If we can bring at least 1,700 of us, that's right, 1,700 of our 1,100 people over to the KG Cichlid live stream, I want you to go in there, and I want you, what's our code word? Before we go, we got a minute. What's our code word? I want everyone to go in, and I want to raid the place with the code word. Code word is corn dog. We're going with corn dog today. Everyone go over there and hang out with me for at least 10 minutes. Let them intro the show. Oh my gosh. And I've got alarms going off on my phone that says KG Cichlid is going to go live. Go over there, drop the word corn dog. That way we know you're there, and let them get through a spiel and then enjoy it. And if you don't like it, hey, you don't have to stay. But if you do like it and you start listening to it on a podcast and that kind of stuff, that's cool. But I'm shutting her down and I'm heading right over there. Link should be from Candy and KG Tropicals. Very easy to spell out there if you're not clicking the link directly right now. I will see you there in a couple of minutes because I got to shut her down and then I'll be there. So thanks for showing up. I really appreciate it. Checking in on my wife. She's got one more. Ah, yes. She says corn dog is the code word. That's right. Code word corn dog. Code word corn dog. Corn dog engage. Corn dog engage. Corn dog